What is up, my friends? Welcome to another episode of the Father Daughter Dance podcast, which helps dads keep up with the velocity of how things are changing for our daughters and gives our daughters and kids this chance and the space to talk about the relationship too. And, please subscribe to and review the pod. It really helps. The world's most, perhaps the universe's most, as we discuss in the pod, most popular guest, Chris Yeh, joins us to interview me about Zoe graduating from UC Davis. And we touched on the whole weekend, my travel planning that helped me spend extra time with Zoe, the event itself, the love, the family attendees, a lovely graduation banquet, and of course, my feelings on the whole event. And I tell one funny story that happened at the graduation and Zoe's reaction when I told her the story, where she actually helped me know that she understands how to not take herself too seriously. And that's what I want to talk about. I just can't imagine a more important emotional skill to develop than to understand not how to take myself or herself too seriously. And there is a part of there are moments of gravity in our lives where it's important. And, I don't really try to say don't take yourself too seriously when we're talking about emotional stuff that are going on. Or even in my dad's funeral, obviously, while there was a degree of solemnity appropriate for it, the truth is still there were lots of laughter and tears at that. And that range is important to me. And that being said, there are a ton of times where I really want her as a dad to understand why it's so refreshing to not take herself so seriously. And we've tried to model it. I mean, for Father's Day, which happened the last day I was there at the graduation, my daughter gave me an air fryer and I sent her a piece of chicken that I tried to cook that was somehow burnt on the outside and like raw on the inside. I have no idea how I did that, but I said epic fail and laughing emoji. And we have like a lifelong running joke about how when we arrive at San Francisco airport, the shuttle that takes us back to our parking space always seems to be driving by as we are coming out. And we have to, after a long trip, we got to wait for another one. And we have this saying between us. We text it to each other a lot and say it, capital T, capital I-N-G, capital T, capital I, capital I-N-G. And it's a joke that we share where we just say there is no God with like minor inconveniences. Look, God's really important, but still, to me, but God can take a joke. I mean, it's from the silliest things of like, just being in a long line or just drivers going too slow or whatever it is. We even use the dope for Homer Simpson to express our frustrations. That gif has gone back and forth. And, even with the stuff that was not really good at the time, we joke about it today. On several occasions, she was younger and I mistakenly went to the San Francisco airport when she was getting picked up at the Oakland airport or get a flight. I would get the airports mixed up. It was not good at the time, but we joke about it now. We both use humor as a way to process things in our life. And there's one more slice to it. Sometimes we just make mistakes. There's no need to joke about it, but it's just rolling with it and doing our best to try again. I've told her so many times about how I want her to make mistakes and how she relates to mistakes that matter. Honestly, here's the payoff. By having the perspective to actually understand and open up and feel what is worthy of feeling, it's really freeing. Because if everything is serious, it's debilitating. If everything's a joke, it's unrealistic. So it's like, you got to have some balance. And it's by understanding which is which that she'll develop the emotional range, the compassion, the balance to live a life that's richer and more rewarding than she might otherwise have. Now, I have made mistakes over the years about joking about stuff that probably wasn't appropriate to joke for, but I just have a balance in my life about what I take seriously. And it's my job to, I think, demonstrate which should be in which category. And I can't determine it for her. She's got to go out there and do it. It's just not my job to say it should be in this one. It shouldn't be in that one. My job is to teach her the capacity and skill to value that range of things that have, need to be serious and things don't need to be serious, and just connect and love accordingly. And, amen to that dance. And speaking of range, let's not let another second, another minute pass to get to yet another incredible podcast with my beloved friend and my own personal Bill Murray. It's Chris Yeh. My friends, won't you join me on the dance floor? Step into the Father-Daughter Dance podcast. Let's do this.
Welcome back to the Father-Daughter Dance. This is your not quite main man, Chris Yeh. I am here with your main man, Tim Taylor, who is going to be speaking, but in a little different way than normal. I'm going to be interviewing him, and he's going to be the father who is on the dance floor, which is a good thing because I can tell you that I am known for ballroom dance, but not for the sort of freestyle that you're used to, Tim.
I'm a free spirit who can freestyle. And let's just say it's bigger than America's, the world's favorite podcast guest / host, Chris Yeh.
Thank you so much. And in fact, it might even be bigger than the world. There might be aliens listening into some of these transmissions. Perhaps we're galactic.
The UFO stuff. That's good. Maybe you look, here's the deal. There might be alien father and daughters. So let's appeal to all possible listeners.
Yes, let's not be humanist about this.
That's just not.
In the future, that's going to be an insult once the aliens unveil themselves.
Instead of inclusive, it'll be called incluFOs. That's sort of the shorthand for including our unidentified flying object neighbors.
Exactly. They prefer not yet identified, nice. Tim. Not yet identified.
Right. There's friends and people I haven't met yet. Or I should say beings I haven't met yet. There you go.
Yes, exactly. We mustn't be peopleist either. But enough of this stuff about aliens. We're here to talk about something momentous.
Yeah.
So, Tim, tell us about what happened this year. What is this big milestone that just happened?
This is a huge milestone. The huge milestone is my daughter Zoe graduated from college. And it's just a culmination of a lot of stuff over the years. And I felt like you've known me since the very earliest days of her life. And so I thought it would be useful to talk it out and talk it out with someone who knows me as well as just about anybody on this planet and beyond. And it was a big thing. So it happened recently. So I thought maybe we just talk it through and let you just ask me questions and we'll just sort of freestyle it.
Well, hit me with the basics first.
Okay.
So this was her graduation. Talk to me about, the logistics.
Yep.
How did you get there?
Yep.
How long did you spend? What did you guys do together? When did she get rid of you so that she could focus on spending time with her friends?
Great questions. Actually, I shouldn't say that because then it sets up, if I don't say great question after another question, then it's not great. But it's a salient question. So she went to University of California, Davis, where she is studying to be a teacher. She's going to grad school. She got 2 years of grad school coming up. And I made a really important decision. It was one of the best decisions I made about that weekend because Davis is 90 minutes from where I live. It's near Sacramento. I live in San Francisco. And I decided to stay in Davis for 4 days. Now, what I didn't know, because I didn't read the material, was that the graduation occurred in the Golden One Arena, which is where the Sacramento Kings play.
Light the beam.
Light the beam. Of course, I made that joke. Light the beam, which is, I actually worked for the Kings for a little while when I was in auditing. But anyway, so the reason I tell you it was a great decision was because, and I'm glad I did it and stayed in Davis because she was there. We got to see each other a ton before the actual event. We went and had a couple meals together and it was just the two of us. And she had this interesting experience in that her closest friends, she's got a group of really close friends. They all have either graduated or they are graduating. They started the same year she started, and they're graduating either this coming quarter or they're staying the whole next year to get their undergrad. They took whatever they did, gap years, or they're taking extra majors or whatever it is. And she had done some celebrating the weekend before with those friends. And so a lot of the events, she didn't know a lot of the people. She knew them, like she could say hi to them, but she wasn't really close to them. And so the rest of the family that was coming up for it wasn't there yet. And so what it meant was we were able to sit together and talk about anything we wanted to talk about. It was very paced. It was very open. It wasn't even all about the graduation. It was just about how she's doing and what she feels about things and how I feel about things. And we talked about everything that was going on in our lives, which is a really meaningful piece of it. And by the way, this was a few weeks ago, but the weekend was Father's Day. So the event ended with me on Sunday going to Father's Day brunch with her. And she gave me a Father's Day gift, which was an air fryer, which I was really excited about. And so, we had a wonderful brunch before I left. And the interesting thing is, Chris, about the whole graduation, other than one moment I'll tell you about, those are probably the most memorable moments of the whole trip. Just spending that time with her. And it was hot because it was in Davis. It was really hot. And then the actual graduation was, as I mentioned, at the Golden One Center. And her mom's side, so her mom remarried, they have a kid, so her sister was there. And then her mom has 3 sisters, all who live in the Bay Area, all who were there. 4 sisters, right? 4 sisters. No, I'm sorry, 3 sisters, whatever. 2 are married, 1 is not. And so the 2 that are married had kids, and some of the kids were there. So it was a really big deal. And I was really happy that my brother, Joe, my oldest brother, he came, and his partner, Jane, came as well. And so it made for a really special thing to have her have a couple people from my side of the family, because my mom's too old to travel all the way across country for that.
Of course.
It just became like, it's this weird thing where I had less access to her, but somehow I appreciated her more because I was able to see all the people that came around for her that loved her. And seeing her talk to her cousins was really sweet. And that talking to her aunts and her uncles as well was really sweet. And it's interesting, all her Tracy's sister, and Tracy as well, Tracy's her mom, and her sisters all are asking about my mom, because they like to talk to my mom, because she's one thing about my mom is she is a tremendous talker. Like you can have very long conversations with her and really feel like you've covered a lot of subjects. She's a voracious reader and just is comfortable with all kinds of subjects. And so what that meant for the actual graduation was she really didn't have a lot of people around her that she knew. She kind of went about it by herself. And so the actual event, maybe we can stop and we can ask questions about everything I've said before I get into the actual event. But there's one other subject matter that I want to cover as well, so we know, which is the idea of graduation from kindergarten all the way through, or preschool. It would start with all the way through. But I don't know. Do you want to talk about it, or should I just keep going on what should I do?
No. I want to touch on a couple of things.
Okay, go for it.
And I think that there are observations on what you've said. Yeah. Hopefully they help put a button on it. I think the first thing is that what you gave both Zoe and yourself was the gift of time.
Yeah.
And during a period when things are so hectic, because you stayed there for that extended period of time, there was this ability to go ahead and give everything the time it needed to breathe.
Right.
Which is a big deal.
Right.
But at the same time, it was a gift, not the obligation of time. right? You were there as much as she needed you.
That's exactly
You were
right.
not there to say, hey, this is about me.
That's right.
And spend all this time with me. You were available to her, but you were also able to hang back and just observe as well. And I think that was the key to the success of the weekend.
Related to that, when I was in Davis, the thing I had told her was, I am low to zero maintenance. I will literally do whatever you want. And that included the first night I got there, I just went to have Italian by myself, and it was great. And it just relaxed her, knowing that like she didn't need to quote unquote think about me or take care of me when she wanted to do something, she knew I would do it. So that is definitely true.
As opposed to if you came in and said, all right, hon, you're going to help me figure out the list of parties we're going to hit. I'm going to tear it up.
I'm going to do my one person play in Davis. Yeah.
The second thing is, I can't believe, since I know you've mentioned that she knows my name, has heard a lot about me, that we have not done a 3-person podcast with your mother yet.
Oh my God, that would be incredible.
She would love to consider that for the future.
She's probably going to listen to this one because she always listens to the ones that you're on.
I know that she listens to them. She's my biggest fan. I'm a big fan of hers as well.
Oh my God, Judy Mirablo Foote, I should say, and Chris Yeh on a podcast is a pretty juicy idea. Duly noted.
Something for you to follow with. It is your podcast.
Duly noted.
Mine, so of course.
Duly noted. I can expand the brand. I can expand the brand. It's really easy.
And the third thing is just, the importance of family. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those occasions we gather as families for both happy occasions and sad ones.
Yes.
And it is so important to make sure that we gather on the happy occasions as well. Yes, it's critical to be there for the sad ones, but let's go there for the happy occasions. And I'm glad you, your brother, his partner, you guys were able to do that.
Yeah. And the thing is, Chris, we also chatted a little bit about, like we talked about the importance of appreciating who's in the seats as opposed to wondering about the empty seats. But she wondered about it because I've got a couple of other brothers that I just have really complex relationships with. And she was so gracious in the way that she just really appreciated my brother and his partner being there. She really wanted my mom to be there, but understood that she couldn't make it.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be something very special to her. But it is challenging for a woman your mother's wonderful mature age to sit through the Davis heat for hours on end. Yes,
at a minimum. Plus, on top of it, she's coming from Hilton Head, South Carolina. The one thing I will say that the joke that my brother and my daughter share, the execution of the weekend is it was not alphabetical. But one of the things that we often talk about as a family is, and you probably have it as well, right? Unfortunately, the last name Taylor always comes at the end or towards the end. So we got to wait through a bunch of other people if it's alphabetical. And so my brother suggested that she legally change her name only for graduations to Zoe Aardvark.
I feel the pain of being late in the alphabet. Right. Only my friend from elementary school, Alan Zachary, was ever behind me. He'll just have to content himself with being a Tony Award nominated playwright and musician.
That's all he has to think about. God, not bad. If that's the trade-off, that's not a bad trade-off. So anyway,
we had a lot of time to think.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
So let's continue. You mentioned there was something you wanted to say about the graduation. What was that?
Yeah. Well, so let's just set the stage is that you could have 6 tickets and 6 and maybe a couple of extras. And so we actually got 9 tickets. And so, or something like that. I don't remember, but it was packed. Like the stadium was packed. And it was done. What I appreciated about it was not drawn out. It was actually very mechanical, like the way they went about it. And they gave a series of speeches, and then each of the people came up. They handed their document to somebody. There must have been a phonetic spelling of their name because there's a lot of people with very exotic last names. and they would introduce them, and they were told,
It's a UC school. Everyone knows it's like 70% Asian, so that's okay.
dude, I swear there were so many Asian and sort of Indian, Pakistani type looking people.
So those would all count as Asian because it's East Asian, South Asian. The general rubric of Asian covers it all.
Okay, that's fine. Does Iranian count Asian? I guess it does. Iranian does count Asian. Anyway, it was noticeable that the folks who were white were outnumbered, but they would come up and they were told not to hug the chancellor, although one person did, and they weren't supposed to dance. And a couple of kids did the gritty going across the. I thought that was so great. It was really, really awesome. And Zoe was sitting amongst the group, and we were texting with her as it was going on. And I think one of the things about the graduation that was really meaningful for me was my daughter, she grew up with her sister, obviously, but didn't grow up with another Taylor in her household. And one of the things I really want for her is to not take herself so seriously. And so part of my role over the course of knowing her has been to help her understand what it means to take a joke at one's own expense. Mm-hmm. And my approach to doing that was mostly making fun of myself when she was younger. And she would get a big kick out of it if suddenly I got stuck behind a bus and it was taking forever. And we'd joke about that, like little things I would teach her as we were going on. Or like that she used to call me Santa Dad. After I revealed to her the truth about Santa, she started calling me Santa Dad because she knew I had to go out and buy her a bunch of gifts for Christmas and what have you. And, she just basically knew it was that. But there was this moment in the graduation where the keynote speaker, some woman, I don't remember even know what, and she was okay. The speakers were okay. They had one student come up and give a speech, and he was confined to a wheelchair and had to be his wheelchair had to elevate to give it was amazing. That speech was amazing. But this woman was talking about whatever, but the basis of her speech was, you got to be in the moment. You are the leaders. You have to be there for it. You have to pay attention. And we're in the Golden One Center, and I look up at the Jumbotron, which is gigantic. The Jumbotron is gigantic.
Right. Absolutely no. It's the best Jumbotron that Vivek's money could buy.
It's the best. It is incredible. And the picture that's on the screen at that point are 200 graduates or 300 graduates. And directly in the foreground, Zoe is the only person looking at her phone. She is. I laughed.
Oh my.
I laughed. I wish I could have gotten a picture of it. I laughed so hard when I saw her do that. And because I think that's funny. I think that's really, really funny, because what had happened was, when she was making that point, the person who was speaking had already made that point like 2 or 3 times.
Right.
So because then when you got your diploma, it was like, you didn't need to stick around if you didn't want. And we were texting, and I was like, okay, you're leaving. Well, I'll meet you out there. But her mom's side family, the 4 or 5 that were there for them, they were off doing other things. And it was me, my brother, his partner, and Zoe out front. And honestly, Chris, I was a little hesitant to tell her the story because I was like, I hope she doesn't think
it's her big day.
Yeah,
she's going to view me as ruining it by pointing this out.
Exactly. Make her feel bad. She laughed so hard, and Joe laughed so hard, and so did Jane. We laughed so hard at it. And she looked at me. She's just like, I was bored. I was like, I understand.
It's a big commencement ceremony.
At that point. And my brother turned and looked at her, and he was like, Zoe, you just be who you are. That's what you are here for. And that's where you were at that point. Then that is awesome. And it really filled my heart a lot that she was able to take it that way. And and had that perspective, which was, I don't know, it was just really heartwarming. I will say that, like, the thing unless, do you want to say anything about that before we go to the next thing?
I would just say that, one of the funny things, this, me turning this to me.
Of
So
course,
as the host, I get to do that every now
of course.
And then. One of the funny things is as you're telling these stories, I'm remembering Marissa's graduation from high school,
Mm-hmm.
which was not this year, but last year,
Mm-hmm.
but in fairly recent memory. And what I remember is that, as always, I tried to figure out how to game the system. So at the graduation ceremony, they told people not to cheer for every student. And it's like, okay, all right, I get it. And then we start going into it and people are starting to cheer. I'm like, okay, they're not going to follow the rules. I get it. All right. And then the cheering kept happening. I'm like, well, we don't have enough people to make a quite loud enough sound. So I began to talk with other people in the area. And I said, listen, here's what we're going to do. We need to support each other, right? In order to make sure our kids get a respectable cheer. And so we're going to group together like 3 or 4 families. And we're all going to cheer for each of the kids. Now, because we're late in the alphabet, I had to rely on people actually following through and fulfilling their promise. But I can tell you that it did, in fact, work. So once again, you can see my approach to life at work.
No, that's the classic example of you actually not really doing something, having other people do it for you, which is create the cheer. But I guess you contributed as well. That's positive. That's smart.
Hey, without that coordination, it wouldn't have happened.
It would not have happened.
Everyone was better off, aside from the people that were not a part of the scheme.
Well, what's interesting is that it's a little atypical for you because you usually don't put that much work into things that we do together. Like, it's usually me doing all the work. Like, I would have thought Alicia would have done it. He's like, Alicia, this is a good idea. Why don't you go do it?
No. See, here's what you have to understand. Because I'm stuck there anyways, much like Zoe was stuck there for the rest of the ceremony, then there's no additional work that I can do instead. So I might as well apply myself to what's happening there in the moment.
So your devotion and love to Marisa was upped by the fact that you couldn't multitask. That's basically what you're telling me.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, so let me ask you a question. So
yes,
how were you at her high school graduate? Like, how did you feel at her high school graduation?
Well, it's always a mixture of things.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel excitement and pride at seeing someone that you remember as a baby growing all the way up and now graduating, becoming an adult. You feel, or I would feel some of the bittersweetness of, she's going to be going away soon, and this marks the end of childhood, and things are going to be very different out into the future. There is just a matter of pride, as I said. You got to make sure the cheer is respectable.
Of course.
Even if it's against the rules.
Right.
I mean, rules were meant to be broken. And then, of course, part of it is also the other family members that are there and the feeling that they have. My parents were there for Marissa's graduation, and, I know that there's a great sense of pride. I mean, you can imagine the pride we feel seeing our children do something. Just imagine the pride a grandparent feels as they see the multiple generations. So it's a mixture of feelings, but generally positive. And I think that you just have to take it in as best you can.
Yeah, that makes sense. And my mom was at Zoe's high school graduation. She loved that. I have this belief about something, which is, so the graduations that I remember are preschool, junior high, high school, and college. Preschool was like just a potluck, basically, but it was really sweet. And I knew a couple of the kids, and that was during my dark times. And so I really appreciated it and felt like, because it was everybody, a lot of them were going their separate ways. It was really sweet.
Right.
What I 100% know is I was more emotional just deeply emotional at her junior high graduation than any of the other ones.
That's interesting.
So part of it, I think, is just me having gotten through some of those. Like that was part of it. Like, oh my God, like I'm here for this, having gotten through those dark days. But I know what another part of it was. I knew so many of those girls.
Oh, yes.
Because I had coached their teams. I had spent time with them on play dates. I had volunteered for their their holiday boutiques. I had made videos about them, like fourth and fifth grade videos, like that, and then ultimately made a big compilation video for them. I just knew them all really well, and certainly high school as a step up is a really big one. Just in the same way that there's elements of not quite the geographical elements you're talking about with high school. I relate to that for sure. And it does feel like a big step into adulthood when you go to college. But just seeing each one of them go by me, the girls in particular, I knew some of the boys, but I knew almost every one of the girls really well. Was really, really emotional. So I was crying the whole time. And then high school, I knew a number of the girls, but it was huge. Like it was just a bigger school and had a bigger thing. And then I got to Davis and it was just like, this was one of like 6 different ceremonies they were having.
That's right.
And I knew nobody. I could only see the other families. And so, a word that you mentioned earlier that really stuck with me, which was pride. Because, our children, and at least Zoe in particular, given where she was, it's so easy for us to forget that they went through COVID.
Yes.
And so to see her, and I was thinking about with all the kids that I was seeing, it was just like to see her having gone through that. And I was there. I went to go pick her up the day that the school basically said we're closing. And so the experience was less emotional, more pride, and sort of also like an acknowledgement that, she's going to master's school, which she's getting her master's in teaching, which I got a master's in business, but it's like she's increasingly going off into a vocation, or not vocation is the wrong word, a career that is unfamiliar to me. I've never been a teacher. I know people are teachers, but I've never been a teacher. And
I believe you've had teachers instruct you when you were growing up.
I have had teachers. And to think that there's going to be people thinking about my daughter the way I thought about some of my teachers on the bad side is scary, but on the good side is very uplifting. But it was just, I expected there to be more. I guess that's not true. It's just this is more a report that I'm reporting to you that it was not an emotional event for me. I was just so happy. I was so happy for her and felt a lot of pride for her having gotten through it.
I think that, the way I would describe it, let's refine your statement there. So the things you describe are emotions.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, and this may be related to the size of the ceremony, that the less intimate the commencement becomes, the less intense your emotions were.
That's true.
So in junior high, I think, as you pointed out, not only was it a smaller ceremony, but you had known those girls for that many years of Zoe's life.
Right.
Whereas high school, well, let's face it, the reason is that high schools have more resources and more professionals. So they don't have us dads hanging around, coaching them and teaching them and so on and so forth. And if there is a dad who hangs around all the time, the administration's like, what the hell is going on here? Let's check the registries, make sure this guy isn't on something.
We need to do some searches.
And so that's why, right? You had a much deeper relationship with the kids, and it was a much more concentrated thing. So the emotion per unit time was very high versus, here you're sitting in Golden 1 and you're like waiting. Okay, I know somewhere in this 2.5 hours will be my 5 seconds to pay attention.
Right. That's exactly right. No, that's exactly right. And seeing the arc of how those kids developed from kindergarten to 8th grade was, they go from these pack of, at times, wild wolves to like these really, they're carrying flowers. Each one of them's carrying a flower down the thing. And so like they're very together. But you're right. That as the intimacy drops, the emotional reaction changes, as well as does the emotion itself. Because there was no, like, just for me in the college thing, there was no, the only emotion that related to my dark times was that just this really rewarding feeling that for over 12 years, I was such a constant force in her life and a really positive force in her life. And so I could see, the culmination of that with the way she, it was really, it's always interesting for me to see her interact with people when I'm not in the interaction, and just see like it's rewarding to see Zoe listen to somebody else. It's reward from across the room. And when she leans in and her eyes are wide open, and maybe she smiles every once in a while, or maybe I can sense that whoever's talking is talking about something more meaningful, and how patient she seems to be. And then when she's speaking, it was good because a lot of these family members are around the same age, but like watching them pay attention to and there was just something, really rewarding about that. And so where the intimacy got high and I was comparatively more moved was the dinner afterwards.
Yes.
And Tracy, I mean, she just did such an amazing job. She's an amazing mom. Like, yeah, she's done a lot. She and we had a very, very good weekend together. There was no difficulty, none of that stuff. I didn't create any of it. She didn't create any of it. It was all about, the focus was on Zoe. And
absolutely.
And she had rented out, this was this area of Sacramento called Old Sacramento. Have you ever been to it?
Oh, yes.
It's basically a street that looks a little bit like Westwood. Like it's just, not Westwood, John Wooden, Westwood, Westworld. Westworld's what I'm going to say. Yeah.
You're thinking about the old Wild West.
The old Wild West.
And again, one of the fun things about Sacramento that hopefully you learned along the way is that the city is built on top of the city.
The city is built on top of what?
There is an entire city underneath the streets of Sacramento.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
There is the sort of 19th century Sacramento underneath the Sacramento that there's there. There are ways to actually go down and tour like, oh my gosh, here we are underground. So it's an interesting thing. Yeah. Anyways,
that is interesting.
You'll have to go on another visit when you go back to Davis to see Zoe, to go on a tour of Old Town Sacramento.
Well, so Old Town Sacramento is basically one long street. And it's what I found out is like people come out with their nice cars and basically just drive up and down it. And there's bars and all this stuff. Anyways, Tracy had chosen this restaurant and rented like this whole banquet room for us. This beautiful table with these absolutely gorgeous, comfortable chairs and very, very high-end hors d'oeuvres and exceptional food. And it was just one long table, kind of like King Arthur kind of stuff. And me and my brother Joe and Jane sat on the end, basically, because I kind of wanted to let Zoe be amongst her family members. And her boyfriend was either sitting across from her or next to her. I can't remember her.
Is this the same boyfriend that I should like because he's a super fan of mine?
He asks about you every time. Every time I go, you gotta come to San Francisco and we'll figure out a way to get down to Palo Alto and go have lunch with Chris Yeh or dinner.
Absolutely. I thrive on adulation.
Of course you do. More than most. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say more than most because the thing.
Hey, listen, I love it.
Well, but
I can't get enough of it. Some people are like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I'm like, no, I'm not embarrassed. This is my right. This is great. Yes, I deserve it.
The funny thing about it is you get so much of it and yet you still love it. Like it's just, and it's not like an addictive, maybe it is addictive, but it's not an addictive thing. It's just like, because you earn it every time and you're like, forget it. I love it. So anyway, so Nick and Zoe were there and so they served this amazing meal and had a beautiful cake afterwards. And, since I was there with just Joe and Jane, or I should say because I was there with my brother and his partner, and then there were 15 other people there for Zoe, it didn't feel like, and Tracy put it all together. So it wasn't really my place to like start banging the glass and say, oh, I want to say something. You know what I'm saying?
That must be hard for you to resist.
It was hard. I thought about it a few times, but I was just like, and it was really, really sweet because Tracy got up. She did it. She banged her glass and she got up and, she's a sweet, reliable, loving mother. And they've, as with many mothers and daughters, they've had their difficulties, but she got up there and she started talking and she couldn't talk. She was crying. Mm-hmm. And of the two of us, I'm the more, I shouldn't say that because I'm not around her enough anymore, but I tend to be the more emotional one, but she mm-hmm. would get emotional even when we were together way back when. But she just could say a few things. And it was so sweet for me to see her be that in front of Zoe. And then Zoe got up to speak a little bit. And, oh God, you know what, actually? So then I looked over at Jane. I was like, Jane, should I say something? She goes, you definitely should say something. And you know what's interesting, Chris? It just didn't dawn on me until just now is that when I got up there and started speaking, I said, I ordinarily have a range of emotions, but the most noticeable and common emotion I've been feeling throughout this weekend is pride. Just, I'm so proud of you and just watching, just watching how you interact with your cousins and your aunts and uncles and the person you've become. And so I don't really remember much of the speech, but it was actually relatively short. And I choked up for sure, but I didn't cry. And it was such an interesting experience. And it was a real testament to her. And it's kind of hard to remember. Not that I really reminded her of it, but I'm sitting in that giant arena with thousands basically of graduates, knowing that there's multiple ones of it, and there's so many people graduating, and you start to forget. Even though a lot of people are graduating from college, a lot of people don't make it that far. There's just a lot of people who don't make it that far, much less at a university like Davis, which is a very fine university. So
one of the top 25 schools in the country.
Right. So Tracy and I had a very warm weekend with one another. And it honestly, like, I don't know whether this is true for her, but what I can say to you is it really was one of those moments where it was just like, we have done well. And now she's moving on to this next stage in her life where, she's already got her initial assignment of where she's going to teach or sort of assistant teach. And just like we don't really need to talk a whole lot anymore. We didn't talk a whole lot anyway, but like over the course of college, but we would communicate about stuff over college, but like she's 23 now. And so that was a really big deal for me to sort of feel, I can't speak for her, meaning Tracy, but whether from her perspective, she's healed with regards to our relationship, but it certainly felt that way. And I was very effusive with my praise for her.
Well, to use a 2-word phrase that has been contaminated, but still applies, mission accomplished.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
This is what you and Tracy set out to do when you decided to bring life into the world. Yeah. The job of the parent is not just to watch over and protect the child, but to help guide them along the way so that someday they can be an adult themselves.
Right.
And obviously she's reached that point. I know that we say that turning 18 makes you an adult, but in this country, it really doesn't.
Right.
And graduating from college really does, right? The difference between being a grad student and being an undergrad, oh my God,
Right.
it's huge. And for you and Tracy to be able to look there and see Zoe with her career stretching out in front of her, with her adoring boyfriend who has wonderful taste in authors right there supporting her. It's a great moment.
Yeah, it really is a great moment. And it's, you know, part of the stuff that we talked about when the two of us were together or having dinner and other meals together was talking about how close she has gotten with her mom, which makes me really happy. It makes me very, very happy that she's that close to her mom. We did have, I don't know why this should be interesting to you other than the fact that you're Chinese, but we had Chinese food, which was really good.
There you go.
I sent her home with a bunch of Chinese food. When all was done with the evening, there was a part of me that was it just felt complete. And I don't think it would, here's maybe the point I want to make. I don't think it would have felt complete if I had not gotten there a couple days earlier. If I had arrived like Friday night or Saturday morning and the Saturday was it just wouldn't have felt the same. And so what was because I got it so early because I thought graduation was going to be in Davis. I'm like, I got it. And it was expensive too. It could have bought you hundreds of pairs of jeans, maybe thousands.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The idea was I just want to make it so it's super comfortable for me, like with regards, and it was the best decision I made. And there were other families that were there early. And so, you know, as the date approaches for you with your daughter, like, I mean, I know you've been to LA a million times, but it's like going a couple days early and just saying to her, like, we're here it's invariably, they'll be like, okay, let's go have coffee or let's go have lunch or whatever it is.
Right.
The end point of having breakfast together, it was very meaningfully symbolic that that was my last interaction with her, where we had, you know, and we went to go have brunch or it was basically breakfast. We went to go have breakfast at a place where the last time we went and had breakfast there is the second time we've been there. The last time we had breakfast there, she was going through something very difficult emotionally. And it was a really connective moment in a place like that. And so to have that be the new way I remember it was really meaningful as well. And so I don't know that, you know, to sort of start to land the collegiate podcast plane here, I'm still, it's so interesting. I'm still sort of sorting through what it all means. Like I'm sorting through just what it means to have a 23-year-old daughter and you know, she's about to embark on a career. My career path was is still jagged as can be. And it's just a different way of thinking about things for her from a perspective of being a teacher. What I do know is this is the one thing that I am reminding myself of right now. So when I was out there and deep in my addiction and the difficulties I was having, like if you put a pin in my life and then expanded the pin of like the ripples in my life, I was causing difficulties for a bunch of people, including my daughter. And then I got sober and went back and forth a couple times. And then finally, for the last 12 plus years have been that. And what I think about is now I put a pin in my personal map. And I think, and after seeing her that weekend, because by the way, she also had some challenging things to the weekend. There were some stressors and just seeing her navigate it and seeing her at times saying, I don't want to talk right now is perfectly fine. It was really helpful to have my brother there because he and I are a good comedy duo. And we also know how to like ease off on her when necessary. Anyway, so if I put that pin down there now, and I see how she behaves, I can see how even today, like who she is, it flows out to other people in her lives. And she knows what it means to be important to someone, having been important to me for as long as she's been important to me, and going through the difficulties she went with me. What it signals to me is and I said, this is one of the things I said during the speech. I was like, those kids that you are going to teach are going to be so blessed that you bring yourself to them. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy with them. They're going to be difficult sometimes, but this woman that my daughter has become is going to make an impact on these kids' lives. So when you say I had teachers, I did have teachers, and there was a few teachers I have that affect me to this day. I know that's true with you too. And it just reminds me, Chris, that college graduation reminded me that it's a celebration of her, but it's also a celebration of just the work that I've done, the work that we've done together, me and her, and the work that she's done to get her to a spot where she's not bearing the challenges of the generational difficulties of my family because I've done my best to stop it. I didn't completely stop it because of some of the stuff. It's like I've done not just to stop it, but to actually bring about in her something that makes her the awesome person that she is. And it really made me feel pride when I thought about the little kids that are going to have the benefit of having her in their lives forever how long that was. So that was really as I was driving home, and I'd said it in the speech like that. And that's the main thing that keeps coming up with me with regards to this college graduation.
The only way to break the cycle is to break the cycle.
That's right.
And that is what you did. You used your own life and your relationship to teach her connection and resilience. And that connection and resilience, because you don't understand the resilience without adversity.
Right.
That connection and resilience is something that she'll be able to use for the rest of her life.
Right.
Now, there is an important question for all those who listen to the Real Men Cry and Laugh podcast, which is how many times during graduation weekend did you cry?
Oh, boy. That's a good question. A lot of them were when nobody was around. And not because I was trying to hide it, but like I would be working out and I would start to get emotional because I was listening to a song. I was typing in Starbucks because I was doing my writing and I was getting emotional. So the number is probably 6, maybe 10, between 6 and 10. There were one or two very, I cried when I drove home too.
You should try to avoid crying while you're driving.
I know that, but like, what am I going to do? Like have a no cry zone? Like, what am I going to do?
You have to exit and finish the cry and then return to the freeway.
By the way, I didn't even mention this. One of the things I did on the way up there, it was so amazing. We went shopping at the outlets and it was so special to go shopping with her. In fact, she sat in a chair waiting for me while I went and shopped, which I have done for her hundreds of times. And so it was the little things like that, in addition to the sort of poignant realization that this is where we are, this is where we become, where I let those tears flow. And some of them have flowed since then. But like I mentioned, around the actual event and what have you, there wasn't a lot of them because of the dynamics that we talked about. And, pride is not one that I typically really brings me to tears, but just the nuanced, varied, loving relationship we had me cry tears of sadness and joy throughout the course of the weekend.
Well, there's only 2 words with which we could possibly end this particular podcast episode.
Okay.
And I invite you to say them with me, which is congratulations, Zoe.
Congratulations, Zoe. Yes. Congratulations, Zoe. We love you. And you know Zoe, so that's really important to me too. There's a group of people that know her and this really was about her. And I hope that people who are listening have some of the same experiences, or if they have different experiences, I'd love to hear about them because oftentimes people message me after them. But I cannot think of a person who I'd rather do this particular podcast and discussion with than you, Chris, because we do have a way of ending our other podcast, which is something I'll say to you right now, which is I love you.
I love you too. And thank you all for joining the dance floor of the father-daughter dance. I'm sure Tim will put in some sort of fancy outro, but in case we don't, I will just note, we did this.
We did it. We did it. All right. Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Tim.